Hi everyone, welcome back to Youth Industry Talks. Today we have someone super special, Charlie Tacker. He is an 18-year-old professional actor who is based mostly in the New England area. He has been acting professionally since he was about 4 or 5 years old, and we know a lot of mutual people and have worked with a lot of mutual people, so I reached out to him and he said yes. I'm super excited, so here it is. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Youth Industry Talks. Today we have someone very special, Charlie Tacker. Here he is. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Charlie Tacker. I'm mostly located in the New England film industry area. I just turned 18 years old and I'm pretty excited to do this interview.
Yeah, that's awesome. My first question I ask everybody, it's kind of annoying because everyone asks this question, but I'm still going to ask it. What made you want to become an actor? And then what made you want to do it professionally and really pursue it as a career?
So I was about 4 years old, and I was obsessed with Spider-Man. I'm not saying I'm not anymore because I still like Spider-Man, but I loved it, and my mom didn't want me jumping off a building and trying it in real life, so she showed me the green screen footage of Spider-Man, and I just told her I wanted to, be in that little industry area. I really wanted to make movies and stuff and be in movies. So I was about 5 or 6 when she helped me get my first extra background part. It was for The Town with Ben Affleck, shooting in Boston. And I just remember seeing like all the big cameras and lights and everything and just how everything was moving. And I fell in love with it. I loved it so much. And then a couple productions later, I worked on a couple student films, indie films, and I realized it's what I wanted to do in life. So,
Oh, that's awesome. So that's really young. You were 4 or 5 when you did the extra thing you said?
yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's, and you remember it?
Yeah, faintly. I remember seeing Ben Affleck. That was pretty cool. I
Wow.
barely knew who he was because I was very young, but my mom told me like he was a big deal. So,
Yeah. And now you know. Now you can say that you've seen Ben
yeah,
Affleck and worked on something.
yeah.
Um, and then how did you, so getting into it professionally, and then you finally start realizing like, oh, maybe I should get representation. How did you get your first agent and manager, and has it changed?
Yes. My first agent and manager. One thing about the industry is just connections, connections, connections. Everyone you meet someone else, connections. So I got my first manager. I was connected to her through someone I worked on a film, and when I was 12 years old, she connected me to this manager. And then this manager connected me to this agent, and then that agent and manager connected me to another agent, and it just keeps going on. And I think since I've gotten a manager and agents, it's really picked up. It's helped a lot. It's a lot easier to get auditions, stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. Like connections, like networking is a thing that
Yep.
I think people when I got into it, people always said like, oh, make sure meet people, network, whatever. And I never really knew what that meant. And then I found myself doing it, but not realizing I was doing it. And then I'm like, oh, I have all these people I can just like reach out to and like ask questions and like talk about the industry with. So that's
Yeah.
very true. A lot of happens, it just happens like naturally. You don't even realizing you're
Yep.
doing it. You just meet people in classes and you meet people doing films and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, getting auditions, it's obviously a little bit easier when you have representation because you don't have to keep self-submitting every 2 seconds of your life.
Yep.
Um, but how was it before having representation, getting auditions? Did you do a lot of self-submissions? Did your parents help you with that? How did that work?
Yeah, so I did a lot of self submissions. My mom, she was a big help in my earlier years, but once I like started to get older, I kind of started to pick it up. Like she kind of showed me. But yeah, I would just self submit most of my stuff. I worked on a ton of student films and indie films, even if we were only shooting for a day or whatever. A ton of those little films just to get more experience and connections and stuff like that. So I didn't have to audition for a lot of them, but most of them I did. But yeah, mostly just self-submitting.
Yeah. That's true. Short films, indie films, like self submissions. That's how you also get like real footage. It's like
Yep.
so much easier, and then it's easier to get an agent or manager because they see
Yep.
you already have all of this past experience from short films and indie films.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you know how many you've done? Because I've looked at your credits. You have a lot.
Yeah. So how many like productions I've been on in general? Like
Yeah.
So probably around like 70 productions I've been, I know it's a lot. A lot of it's not on my IMDb because it's mostly, a lot of them aren't big, but it's just stuff for experience, just getting in front of the camera as much as you can, getting the feel for it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And for auditions, like whether it's a really big opportunity or a smaller opportunity, do you have a quote unquote process, or do you like, does it vary depending on like what the project is and like the genre?
of course. So I go by the process that you've probably heard of it. It's the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why. Who are you talking to? What are you talking about? Where are you talking about it? When is it? Why are you talking about it? It kind of like helps break down the scene. You get a little more understanding of it. It's not all about just memorizing the lines and making sure you have the lines in your head. It's about acting natural. And yeah, I like to go by the 5 W's. It's like my favorite method used for auditions.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I learned that in one of
Yeah.
my early classes when I started doing it professionally, and I've
Mhm.
I've basically just like stuck with it ever since. Um, One thing I have like I'm still trying to find is when memorizing lines, obviously, how do you find a way to not memorize a way to say it, if that makes sense? Because a lot of the times I feel like I memorize the lines, but I get stuck in the one way of saying it, and then it doesn't sound like natural, if you know what I mean. How do you find
Yeah.
yourself like having that like issue? Is there a way that you help yourself trying to get out of that habit?
Reading with someone else, because it's a lot different than when you're reading it in your head or reading it by yourself, like talking to a wall. So much better reading it with someone else and having them give you feedback. I
Yes.
think that helps a lot.
So auditions, do you also do voiceover or do you only do like on camera? Oh, you
Yeah,
do?
I do voiceover. Not a lot, but I definitely do some voiceover. I've had a couple projects I've worked on. Like I did one for a museum up in Woolwich Town, for my state, and it was like this animated thing, and like I had to like be one of the animated characters. Kind of cool thing. I honestly like doing voiceover work, and voiceover auditions. They're a lot simpler than self tapes. Sometimes they can get like confusing and like hard, but I like voiceover.
And you also do commercial too? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you do you find there a big difference between there, because self tapes are, I guess the setup is the same for TV, film, and for commercial, but is like a different way you approach it? Do you still use the 5 W's for commercial?
Yeah, but I think depending on the commercial, it's important to either be less or more animated. Um like, if you're doing like a commercial for rather like if you read the script and it's not very, how do I say it, realistic, it's like, more promoting the product. Like you want to be like more upbeat, animated, stuff like that, like rather than like in a serious role.
Okay. Have you done all three: TV, film, voiceover, and commercial? Like on
Yes.
set, you've had experience for. So what was your first time on set for each of those things?
First time on set for film was The Town. But like, I mean, that was like extra. I want to say my first time like being like main character for a student film was this film Goldfish. He went to Harvard, the director, I think, either Harvard or Emerson. I think it was Harvard. That was like my first film that I was, played the main character. Didn't speak a lot, but I was 6 years old. My first voiceover, I think, was the museum in Lowell. Yeah, it was a museum. And my first commercial was for an Ocean State Job Lot commercial. I was 10 years old.
Wow. Did you get the last two you said with by yourself, or did you have representation at that time?
I got those ones by myself, but it was a long process. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Yep.
Hmm.
For when you did self submissions, did you mostly do it on Backstage, or did you use Actors Access and Casting Networks?
Some, it was, like a mixture of both, mostly backstage. Yeah, but
Yeah.
like sometimes like we would use Actors Access. Like it just kind of varied, whatever like popped out.
Yeah. And now, are you in college now?
Well, I start in January, so I
Oh,
applied late, so I start late. But
oh, okay. And are you going for acting or for something else?
well, I'm actually going for film, so like media arts production, so like behind the camera, then in front of the camera, just to like get to know like everything that goes on set. But I think my junior year, I will be taking a BFA in acting.
Wow. And where are you studying?
Emerson in Boston.
Oh, okay. That's a great school. I know a lot of people who go there. That's
Really?
awesome. For a lot of people are going now. For some reason, I thought you already started, but you applied late, so you're starting January.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well,
It's
we got a
fun.
longer summer break, so
Yeah, exactly.
with COVID, so you've been doing this like forever. For me, at least, I started right before COVID hit, so most of my experience in the industry has been in COVID. So like that's kind of the only way
Yeah.
I know. But how was that change for you?
So before COVID, I was going to New York almost every like 3 times a month for auditions. I was going so much to New York and like Boston to get in front of like a casting director. And it changed so much when COVID hit. It was just self-tape, self-tape, self-tape. And I found, right when COVID hit, I went into like a deep hole of like unmotivation, being lazy all day, wasn't really focusing on like my career as much. And maybe like halfway through COVID, got myself back up on my feet. I was like isolated, so like I kind of like got to like work on myself better just by myself. And I think it positively helped me in a way, but the process of auditions was definitely like altered.
Do you prefer in person over self tape?
That's a good question, because you do a self tape, and if you don't like it, you just redo it. But in
Right.
person, and when you're in person, you could just get so like nervous. But I love the feeling of going in person and having an audition. I miss it a lot. I haven't had one in a while. I would have to say maybe mm, in person.
In person.
Yeah.
I did a few in person ones in Boston, New York. Again, only a few because COVID happened like a few months after I started doing it professionally. And
Mhm.
I was so nervous for all of them. Like
Yep.
I never messed up horribly and like, bombed an audition, but thinking back, I'm like, I didn't mess up, but I definitely didn't do great. Like,
Yeah,
so when in person it's starting to come back a little bit, but self tapes I think are always going to be here to some extent. Especially for us, like we don't have to go to New York every week. We can just send in a self tape.
Yep.
But I think when I'm going to start have to go back to in person, we'll see how that goes because
Yeah.
it's been like 2 years of like constant self
Mhm.
tapes and finding myself like just rewatching myself over and over and over again and like perfecting it.
Yeah.
Um, oh, and then okay, so my last few questions are kind of deeper questions, so you can go as deep or as not deep as you want to.
Okay.
But keeping in spirit with like what I call them youth industry talks, I talk to a lot of young people in the industry. Since you started like really young, what have been like the biggest things you've learned so far? And are there any issues that you've seen that you hope like us as a generation of young people can fix as we grow up into the industry?
Well, I think you get older and you kind of like your eye opens more to the industry. Like you go into it thinking, oh my God, all these people are just making movies and they're just making so much money and it's all great. But you get to see like the struggles and stuff like that and like such an impact new people and young people can have on the industry when they get older. I mean, if you look at TV 30, 40 years ago, it's sort of different than it was now. And that's just, the youth changing the industry. I think a problem we have today is a lot of my brothers and sisters in the union, right, on the crew side, they're being worked like really hard and not enough time to like rest, very overworked, and expected to work a whole lot of hours, and they're about to go on strike because they're just really like overworked and stuff like that. So I hope like the crew side, um, some lights get shined on them. I hope something changes in that category.
Good.
Have I done crew work?
Yeah.
Sort of. I just started producing. I produced a film a couple months ago with my friends. A lot of my friends my age. We make short films and stuff like that, and like write. Nothing huge, but I honestly really like working behind the camera. It's so fun. You can like direct the actors, and like even if you're acting and directing, you can like direct yourself. Do whatever like you want to have on camera. Super fun. It's super fun editing and just everything like that. It's fun being crew.
How has it been writing too? I love talking to writers about about that. How has it been writing for the short films that you've done so far?
Yeah, so I love writing. Writing is it's very cool. I started writing screenplays maybe my sophomore year of high school, but it's just like, especially when you're doing it with a group of people. Have you ever heard of a 48-hour film contest?
Yes. I haven't done
Yeah,
one, but I know what they are.
yeah. So like when we do a 48, like me and like the people like I work with, like create films with, when we do a 48, it's a fun process of just you get your category and you just gotta write it in like a couple hours, like brainstorm. It's so fun. I think writing is like a cool way of expressing your feelings on paper and like, showing what you see in your head on paper, then on screen. It's pretty cool.
Do you have because I know I don't. I've done writing a bit, never done anything with it, but just like writing pilots for myself and like because I just find writing very fascinating too. But I haven't
Yeah,
done anything with it yet. But do you have a process or a way that you like to go about writing? Do you do a lot of outlining first, a lot of planning, or do you just try and like go for it on the page?
sort of like I'll grab a notebook and I'll jot down like, you know, like what I want, like what's the word? Like the climax,
Oh
the
yeah,
step.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yes.
I like jot that down on paper and then kind of like create scenarios in between here and there and just start writing it. You write screenplays, right? Like the format?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. But as I said, I haven't been writing for long. So like I've been writing for only like 2 years, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's super. I've only been doing it for like a year or two. It's very I don't know the word. It's like I feel like you just feel like you have control over it. That sounds like very
Yeah.
like
No, but
power
yeah,
hungry. But
exactly.
like when you're acting, it's I love acting obviously, but you don't have as much of a say for a lot of the other things that go on in the story because obviously you didn't write the script. You can like make up things for your own character, but you can't really write your own story if that makes sense. So for me, it's I just love being able to have control over the story and how it's written because I find a lot of the times, especially with like the way young people talk in TV and film, is not very accurate in my opinion. So I like finding my like writing it from a perspective of someone who's young and knows how teenagers actually talk in real life.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, I couldn't agree with you more on that.
Yeah, I think I brought that up with like I've had a few writers on this. I was actually Brendan Egan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
yeah.
I had Brendan on like I don't know, like a week ago, and we were talking about how young people talk and how young people are cast in like movies and TV shows.
Mhm.
And we were talking about how like not just Netflix, but this was an example he used. They cast like a 20-year-old to play like a 14-year-old, and it's like what the
Yeah.
and then you have
Uh-huh.
like a crew of 50-year-olds writing for a 14-year-old who's
Yeah.
being played by a 20-year-old.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Um, oh, and I meant to ask, one thing about when I was talking about issues in the industry, I'm just moving all over the place. You're talking about crew, how it's being overworked. I've been on a few productions. Again, I've only been doing this for like 2 years, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Like I was talking about this with Brendan. I worked on Graffiti, and
Mhm.
I was there for I don't know like 12 hours, which is like a normal that's like a normal set day for any actor ever, like 10, 8, 10, 12 hours. But the crew was there like probably 3 or 4 hours before me, and then probably stayed like 2 or 3 hours after me.
Yep.
And I I just never understand like how they live. They're constantly moving and moving and moving. Like a lot of the time I'm on set, I'm just kind of waiting there, sitting, getting makeup done, chilling on my phone, talking with my parents, like talking with the actors. I'm not really doing stuff for that straight 12 hours, but the crew is
Yeah.
like
Working there. Yeah.
nonstop. Yeah. So I just want to say that
I
because
like
I agree with
graffiti
you.
though. I remember seeing you in graffiti.
Oh, wait, you were there?
No, I remember seeing you in the film. Like I watched the
Oh,
film. It
oh,
was Charlie Norton's film, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Brendan worked on it. Yeah, it was a good film. I liked that film.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
No problem.
um, my last few things are any words of advice to actors, writers, filmmakers, people in front of or behind the camera?
Well, I know you hear this a lot, but I could not stress it enough when I tell you to believe in yourself. Like it's not just like, oh, believe in yourself, like you hear that a lot, but you really need to like, you need to like own it. You need to tell yourself like, I got this, this was made for me. You gotta there's a difference, right? There's a difference between you want to be a celebrity or you want to be an actor, you know? It's like if you want to be an actor, you got to believe in yourself and like, it's practice makes perfect, If on your spare time, memorize a monologue and just keep doing it, or like download a screenplay and read it with someone and like just stay working and stuff like that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And oh, my last thing, any like plugs, Instagram, movies coming out, projects coming out you're working on, anything like that?
Yeah, so not much projects I'm working on right now. My Instagram is just at Charlie Tacker. Same with my Facebook and Twitter. But I am writing a short film right now in the process. I'm pretty excited about it. I have high hopes for it. It was originally for a creative portfolio for a school I was applying to, but I ended up really liking the script, and now like we're working on it a lot. I'm probably gonna film that soon, but that'll be on my Instagram soon. But besides that, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so
Yeah,
much.
thank you. Had a great time. A few things I forgot to mention on some of my recent and upcoming projects. I'm Young Chris on Castle Rock. I'm Josh on Nosferatu, and I'm Brian on Luna the Witch. Season 2 comes out soon. Thank you.
And yeah, that was my talk with Charlie. It was great to talk to such a experienced and young person who's been working in the industry for so long. He's the definition of a child actor who just keeps working and pushing to just make it and keep working. He just loves it so much. He had great insight on everything in the industry, about issues in the industry he believed in and I agree with him on, and what it was like to be very young in the industry and growing up in it and just to keep pushing. So listen to what he said. He's a very wise person. I'm so glad I got to talk to him. And yeah, stay tuned.